Welcome to the University of Minnesota Extension Proper Cooling Food Educational Video. I'm Michelle, and today we're going to review why you should and how you can properly cool foods you cook at home or at work. Now, before we begin, let's talk a little bit about why it's so important to cool your food properly. According to the Center for Disease Control, 1 in 6 people fall sick with a foodborne illness every single year. Most people are familiar with this term, foodborne illness, yet it is not always common knowledge that a major cause of foodborne illness is improper cooling and reheating techniques. When you don't cool your food quickly enough, dangerous bacteria have time to multiply to dangerous quantities. This illness-causing growth can occur within the temperature range of 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. However, these microorganisms multiply most rapidly between the temperatures of 70 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the zone we refer to as the super danger zone. To limit microorganism growth, we need to cool our food down to 70 degrees Fahrenheit within 2 hours after cooking, and down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit in a total of 6 hours. If not cooled in time, microorganisms may reach large enough quantities and result in vomiting, cramping, and diarrhea, some pretty unpleasant symptoms. As bad as these symptoms sound, foodborne illness can actually be even more dangerous and possibly life-threatening for those who are sick, pregnant, very young, or very old. As unpleasant as this all sounds, the good news is that it is completely preventable, and I'm going to show you how. Today we prepared traditional beans and rice, which are the top foods that cause toxic-related foodborne illness. Surprised? I was too. It turns out that together, as beans and rice cook, the mixture develops a high density or thickness, which actually traps heat and makes it more difficult to cool, thus providing the perfect environment for microorganisms to grow. Now, I have gathered some supplies to help ensure we can cool down our food to the proper temperature in the proper amount of time. I have 1 large baking pan, an even larger pan, a food thermometer, and a spatula. Before we begin, let's calibrate our food thermometer. You can calibrate a thermometer by sticking it in a cup of ice water. After a minute or so, the thermometer should read 32 degrees Fahrenheit, freezing point. Now that our thermometer is calibrated, we can begin. We will start by temping our rice and beans. We need to make sure that the food has not already dipped into the temperature danger zone below 140 degrees. If it has, we must reheat the food to 165 degrees Fahrenheit to kill off any harmful microorganisms that have already begun to multiply. Luckily for us, our food is above 140 degrees, so we don't need to worry. To best cool our rice and beans, we will be using a method called an ice bath, which is exactly what it sounds like. An ice bath is used to cool down any mixable or liquid-like foods such as soups, grains, sauces, etc. Let's start by filling our large pan with ice. Then we'll follow this by adding cold water until it's a slushy consistency. Then place the smaller pan into the water and scoop the beans and rice into this smaller pan. We want to make sure the water and ice rise to the same level as the beans and rice within the smaller pan. Use the spatula to stir the mixture around to promote even cooling. been about 20 minutes and our food has already cooled down to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which means it's out of the super danger zone where microorganisms grow most rapidly. Now we can transfer our pan of food into the fridge. We want to keep the beans and rice in the pan uncovered and no more than 2 inches deep so that the cold air of the fridge can circulate. The greater the surface area exposed to the cool air, the quicker the food will cool. When cooling multiple different containers, another thing to keep in mind is to make sure there is room between cooling foods and to never stack them on top of one another. Let's discuss some other ways to properly cool leftover food. Not every food can be cooled with an ice bath, yet other techniques still employ many of the same principles. The first goal is to reduce the size of the food you are cooling to maximize its exposure to cool air. If you are cooling a roast, slice it into smaller chunks before refrigerating. If you're cooling lasagna, cut it into smaller portions instead of sticking the entire pan in the fridge. If you are making a soup and know you will be storing it to eat on a different day, instead of adding all of the water or broth that the recipe calls for, only add half and freeze the other half while you continue cooking. Add the frozen broth or water back into the soup to speed up the cooling process. No matter the food item you are cooling, make sure to temp it periodically and throw it out if it does not reach 70 degrees or lower within 2 hours or 40 degrees or lower in the 4 hours following. Regardless of the food item you are trying to cool, remember not to cool your food on the counter. You can put it in the refrigerator right away. That's what your fridge is meant to do. When you have leftover food, take the time to cool it safely so you or others don't get sick.